Hi guys, this is your personal physiologist here, Harmony for the Tech. Today we're giving you a brief overview on the physiology of the hypothalamus pituitary axis. So, in the last segment we mentioned the embryology and the histology of these hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Today we will look at how the hypothalamus effects control on the major adrenal glands in the human body, okay? So, let's get to it. So, the hypothalamus, in connection with the pituitary gland, they form what we call the hypothalamus pituitary axis, okay? So, the following structures are involved in the hypothalamus pituitary axis. We mentioned that the hypothalamus consists of an amalgamation of nuclei which come together and effect their actions on the anterior and posterior pituitary glands. Alright, so of importance are the two nuclei, which are the supraoptic nucleus. The other one is called the paraventricular nucleus. We'll only speak to these. There is more than 25 nuclei in the hypothalamus, but we'll only speak to these, okay? So, the hypothalamus connected to the anterior and posterior pituitary gland via what we call the infundibulum, okay? Infundibulum. The infundibulum lies at the base of the hypothalamus, what we refer to as the median eminence. So, at the median eminence, we have two arteries that provide perfusion to the structures in the hypothalamus. We call them the superior and the inferior hypophyseal arteries, okay? So the superior and hypophyseal arteries, they'll join together here and form this capillary bed which joins with the portal vein to another capillary bed. So this connection between the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary gland, we call it the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. On the other hand, the pituitary gland, through its axons from the hypothalamic nuclei, is connected to the posterior lobe via what we call the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract, okay? So now, let's start with the posterior pituitary gland. We need to dissect it and look at what it produces, right? So here we go. Posterior pituitary gland, we call it the neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis, okay? So the neurohypophysis only secretes hormones produced by the hypothalamus. So it secretes hormones from your hypothalamus. Which hormones are these? We have two major hormones that we find in your posterior pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus, via what we call the paraventricular nucleus, is going to synthesize a hormone known as oxytocin. First one, oxytocin, okay? Oxytocin. From who? Your paraventricular nucleus. Look at the second one. We have this seedling of paraventricular nucleus. We call this the supraoptic nucleus, okay? So the supraoptic nucleus is going to produce another hormone that we call vasopressin. Vasopressin. So the other name of vasopressin is anti-diuretic hormone. Anti-diuretic hormone. This is produced by your supraoptic nucleus. These hormones are synthesized in the hypothalamus. They will be stored in these little nodules in the axons of the posterior pituitary gland. We call these the herring bodies. So when a stimuli reaches the supraoptic nucleus and paraventricular nuclei, they will send an action potential which will stimulate secretion of all these hormones into your blood vascular system. Then they will go to their target organs, okay? So, a bit about these hormones. Remember, all of these hormones will be mentioned in later segments. We'll dissect them, we'll explain what each and every one does, okay? In this segment, we'll only touch a bit on each and every one of the hormones released by your hypothalamus pituitary axis. So what does oxytocin do? Oxytocin, major functions of oxytocin, constriction, okay? So there's going to be what we call the milk let down reflex. Milk let-down reflex, okay? What is the milk let-down reflex? So oxytocin goes to your mammary glands. So those myoepithelial cells, they are allowed to contract and eject milk by the action of oxytocin. So secretion of milk secretion, that's what the milk let-down reflex refers to, milk secretion. Keep in mind, oxytocin doesn't synthesize milk. Synthesis of milk is prolactin. Ejection of milk, oxytocin. Okay? When you're giving birth, parturition, okay? So oxytocin functions there. It facilitates uterine contractions, okay? So milk let-down reflex, uterine contractions. Just carry those with you to the exam. Uterine contractions. Much of it is going to be mentioned in later segments. Vasopressin, as the word says, vaso for vessel, okay? Pressin, you're pressing vessels. The other name is anti-diuretic hormone. So diuresis means excess water in your urine, okay? So it means it's going to be anti-loss of water in urine. So these are the two functions of vasopressin. They're all found in the name, okay? So pressing vessels. It presses vessels. We call that vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction. So vasopressin is going to constrict vessels in cases to try and regulate your blood pressure, okay? So vasopressin constricts your vessels and increases blood pressure. So this increases your blood pressure. We use what we call the V1 receptors. So your muscular layer, the muscle in your blood vessels, has what we call V1 receptors for vasopressin. These are also known as your arginine vasopressin receptor type 1, okay? Just if you meet them. Another function of vasopressin is this, anti-diuresis, okay? So vasopressin goes to the kidneys and expresses what we call aquaporins, okay? These are water channels, aquaporins, special water transporters. So we have different types of aquaporins that we find, 1 through 7, but majorly we need aquaporin 2 in the kidney. So type 2 via the receptor type 2, okay? So vasopressin has the V2 receptor in the kidneys, specifically your collecting duct and your distal tubule, so the distal convoluted tubule, okay? So here we're expressing aquaporins, then we increase water resorption. So this increases water resorption, okay? I think this is much to say about vasopressin. So this is just V1, increase blood pressure, press the vessels, okay? So we are working through IP3 and DAG. This side, we're using cyclic AMP. We express those aquaporins on the distal convoluted tubules and the collecting ducts of your kidney tubules, okay? For you to understand the hormones secreted by your adrenal hypophysis, you need to know which of the glands in the human body are controlled by the hypothalamus and which ones function independently of any influence from the hypothalamus, okay? You need to know those. Which ones are controlled by the hypothalamus, okay? So let's look at those. We have 3 major glands controlled by your hypothalamus as follows. The first one is your adrenal cortex, okay? Adrenal cortex. The second one is going to be your gonads. Gonads. So you have your ovaries for the females. Ovaries for the females. Then you also have your testes for the males. Testes for the males. Testes for the males, alright? What happens here? The third one, we call it your thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland, alright? So the other hormones released by the hypothalamus, they really don't have a target gland. They will just affect their functions on different cells, okay? So in the adrenal cortex, let's talk about the adrenal cortex initially. The adrenal cortex is going to be divided into 3 sections. The first section is called the zona glomerulosa, alright? First section is called the zona. So we are going from the cortex all the way to the medulla. So from the outermost portion of the cortex, we have the zona glomerulosa, okay? The zona glomerulosa will produce what we call mineralocorticoids. Mineralocorticoids. A good example is your aldosterone, okay? So, this is your aldosterone. Aldosterone functions mainly to regulate your blood pressure. It's going to be activated mostly by what we call your renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. But I won't mention that for today. So, this is aldosterone. Aldosterone also responds to a lesser extent to stimulation by what we call your adrenal corticotropic hormone, okay? ACTH. Look at this monster here. So this monster is released by your hypothalamus, okay? So the hypothalamus has cells, we call them the corticotroph cells, okay? Comes from the corticotroph cells, okay? These are found in your adrenal hypophysis. Corticotroph cells, ACTH. Who stimulates ACTH to be released? Okay, so we have your CEO there, sends orders to the general manager. So the general manager receives orders and then relays the signals to other hormones. So this is ACTH. ACTH is released due to what we call corticotropin releasing hormone. So corticotropin releasing hormone. This hormone comes from your hypothalamus. CRH, okay? So this is corticotropin releasing hormone. CRH, okay? Corticotropin releasing hormone. So this one comes from your hypothalamus. This one comes from your pituitary gland. So this is it for your zona glomerulosa. So all the portions of the adrenal gland, they respond to ACTH, okay? So the first portion was your zona glomerulosa. The second portion is referred to as your zona reticularis. We also have another one that we call your zona fasciculata. So we start with zona glomerulosa. The next one, the medial one in the cortex, we call it the zona fasciculata, okay? Zona fasciculata. Zona fasciculata. So zona fasciculata responds to ACTH as well. So ACTH responding from corticotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. Corticotropin releasing hormone releases ATH. ATH from the zona fasciculata will release cortisol. So cortisol is said to be a glucocorticoid. Glucocorticoid. So these are steroid hormones, okay? The third portion, we call it the zona reticularis. Zona reticularis. The zona reticularis is going to produce what we call your androgen precursors. Androgen precursors, okay? So these are your male hormones, androgenic precursors. Androgen precursors. So this is it for the adrenal cortex, okay? All of them, they respond to ACTH. Okay, so you have the gonads. This is your second adrenal gland, okay? So the gonads will receive their stimulation from what we call the gonadotropic cells found in the adrenal hypophysis. The gonadotropic cells will release two hormones, FSH and LH. So FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone, okay? This stands for luteinizing hormone. So these will majorly regulate your menstrual cycle. Formation of follicles, Graafian follicle, that's your FSH. Luteinizing hormone. So day 14 of your menstrual cycle, you get that luteal stage, okay? So this is what you have. So FSH and LH are released due to a hypophysiotropic hormone known as your gonadotropin releasing hormone coming from the hypothalamus. So gonadotroph cells release FSH and LH. This is in the anterior pituitary gland. They are also stimulated by your gonadotropic releasing hormone. So you need to flip this up into the other end. So you have gonadotropin releasing hormone stimulates the adrenal hypophysis to release FSH and LH. These will go to the gonads. Simple stuff. Alright, so the other gland that we have is known as the thyroid gland, okay? So, the thyroid gland also receives control from the hypothalamus pituitary axis. What does the thyroid gland do? The thyroid gland releases what are called thyroid hormones. Let's start our journey from this side. The hypothalamus releases what are called your thyrotropin releasing hormone, TRH, okay? Thyrotropin releasing hormone descends via the hypophysioportal system, stimulates what are called your thyrotrop cells. So the thyrotrop cells to release what are called thyroid stimulating hormone, okay? The thyroid stimulating hormone descends all the way to the thyroid gland. We have TSH receptors on the cells of the thyroid gland, what are called follicular cells. So we then further stimulate release of your T4 and T3. So this is thyroxine and triiodothyronine, okay? Nothing much to be said here. All of these will be covered in detail in later segments. The other glands that we have, which are not controlled by the hypothalamus, are as follows. So, these are independent glands. So if you meet these, do not mistake them for glands controlled by the hypothalamus, okay? So, we have your adrenal pancreas, we have your endocrine pancreas, okay? Endocrine pancreas doesn't care less what the hypothalamus is saying, does its own job, okay? Endocrine pancreas, we get your insulin, we get your glucagon, you also get somatostatin, okay? This is that. The second gland, which functions independent of influences from the hypothalamus, is your adrenal medulla, okay? So the adrenal medulla will secrete what are called catecholamines. The catecholamines, that's your adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, okay? Then we have your noradrenaline, also known as norepinephrine. The third one is your parathyroid gland. The parathyroid gland functions to secrete what we call PTH, okay? Parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone will function in bone resorption, okay? It works in cases where you have hypocalcemia. So it dissolves bone and increases the amount of calcium in your bloodstream. It also acts to increase calcium absorption in the GIT, okay? So let's go back to the hypothalamus pituitary axis, okay? And really put a nail to the hypophysiotropic hormones, okay? So that's an interesting word. All the hormones released by the hypothalamus, we call them hypophysiotropic hormones, okay? Hypophysiotropic hormones. So these hypophysiotropic hormones will either be secreting, or we call them releasing, and they will either be inhibiting, okay? For the stimulating one, or the secreting one, or the releasing ones, let's just call them stimulatory, okay? For the stimulatory hormones coming from the hypothalamus, we have the following. We have gonadotropin releasing hormone. We say this one will stimulate your FSH and LH, okay? Second one, we talk of corticotropin releasing hormone, goes to the anterior pituitary and stimulates the secretion of adrenal corticotropic hormone. This one goes to your adrenal cortex, okay? Adrenal cortex. Third one, okay? We have, so this is the gonads. This is adrenal medulla, adrenal cortex, Then we now have your thyroid gland. Thyroid gland will receive the following. So we're going to have thyrotropin releasing hormone, okay? Thyrotropin releasing hormone goes to the adenohypophysis, stimulates release of TSH. Then we have TSH going to the thyroid gland. Then we have T4 and T3. Look at the other hormones released by your hypothalamus. These ones are inhibiting hormones, okay? The first one, these ones are inhibitory, okay? Inhibitory. Right. The first one is what we call somatostatin. Somatostatin. Somatostatin says, wherever I am, I'm going to be inhibiting, okay? Somatostatin, we call it a universal inhibitor. This guy is a monster, universal inhibitor. So, when released from the hypothalamus, its major job is to inhibit the secretion of growth hormone, okay? That's why we always call somatostatin your growth hormone inhibiting hormone, okay? Growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Growth hormone inhibiting hormone, okay? So, one last stimulating hormone that we had to mention in your hypothalamus was your growth hormone releasing hormone, okay? So growth hormone is stimulated by what we call growth hormone releasing hormone. So this means we have 4 stimulatory hormones and only 2 inhibiting hormones. The second inhibiting hormone, we call it your prolactin inhibiting factor. Prolactin inhibiting factor, okay? The common name for PIF is what we call dopamine. Dopamine. Dopamine will inhibit the secretion of prolactin from the adrenal hypophysis. So, prolactin is the only hormone with a unique fact. The fact that its release from the anterior pituitary gland is under predominant inhibition by dopamine. You don't have a releasing hormone for prolactin, okay? So, this is all on your hormones from the hypothalamus. These are all the hormones from the hypothalamus. First one, these ones are inhibitory, okay? Inhibitory. Right. The first one is what we call somatostatin. Somatostatin. Somatostatin says, wherever I am, I'm going to be inhibiting, okay? Somatostatin, we call it a universal inhibitor. This guy is a monster. Universal inhibitor. So, when released from the hypothalamus, its major job is to inhibit the secretion of growth hormone, okay? That's why we always call somatostatin your growth hormone inhibiting hormone, okay? Growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Growth hormone inhibiting hormone, okay? So, one last stimulating hormone that we had to mention in your hypothalamus was your growth hormone releasing hormone, okay? So growth hormone is stimulated by what we call growth hormone releasing hormone. So this means we have 4 stimulatory hormones and only 2 inhibiting hormones. The second inhibiting hormone, we call it your prolactin inhibiting factor. Prolactin inhibiting factor, okay? The common name for PIF is what we call dopamine. Dopamine. Dopamine will inhibit the secretion of prolactin from the adrenal hypophysis. So, prolactin is the only hormone with a unique fact. The fact that its release from the anterior pituitary gland is under predominant inhibition by dopamine. You don't have a releasing hormone for prolactin, okay? So, this is all on your hormones from the hypothalamus. These are all the hormones from the hypothalamus.